Hey everybody, Ben here from Snipit Studios, and today let's talk about pigments. So if you're not really sure, what is a pigment anyway? Pigments, both organic and inorganic, are chemicals usually ground into a powder that give everything in the world color, whether that be paint, chalk, colored pencils, your clothing, whatever it happens to be. It's made primarily with pigments. Now for art, pigments are sort of one key ingredient among the usual three. Pigment, binder, and stabilizer exist in pretty much every artistic medium you've got. At least, of course, anything that isn't bleached or dye-based. That's a different type of adding color to things. Now that's sort of the simple idea behind pigments, and it's what most beginners need to know. But the rest of this video, I just in advance, is going to be something that if you're new to painting, you might want to skip past this because this is going to get a little complex. This is for real color nerds. People that are so into their paint, they want to learn so much about their paint that they got to just dive into pigments, individual pigments in particular. Every tube, jar, or whatever of paint you have is going to have a color code on it. I'm just going to pick up this jar here. It's going to say pigment somewhere on there, or it might just have a color code, in this case PY37. P for pigment, Y for yellow, 37 is just the number of them. There's a big list. How do you identify them? Well, that is where the pigment database comes in handy. This is a tool that I have found online a number of years ago, and I love it. I've been using it for years to research different colors, learn what my colors are, learn to identify them, and also do some cross-platform media and brand identification. Now that sounds really nerdy, but there's actually a lot of practical advice within this. Okay, so what do I mean by cross-medium references here? Well, the thing is when you're switching from maybe colored pencils to a pastel, to an acrylic paint, to an oil paint, back to a watercolor, then to a gouache, how do you know that the color is the same every single time? They may all say cadmium red, they may all say quinacridone violet. You might be looking at 5 different pigments across all these mediums, and if you're switching between brands, well, that's a whole other thing in the mix too. But how do you know that the color you're using is the same? That is where identifying the pigments on what you're using really comes in handy. Pretty much any artist or professional art supplies, some student stuff too, is going to have that color code or pigment information on the paint tube, jar, product itself somewhere. Again, the thing to look for is a letter and number designation. The letter P for pigment, and then different colors based on the color. So PR is red, PO is orange, PY is yellow, and so on and so forth. Again, link to the pigment database is in the description box below, so you'll be able to find that and reference it later as well as I'm talking here today. So you identify a pigment and say, okay, this is this color in this tube of paint. It's also this color in this pastel, so if I'm switching between the two, I want to use the same color in my drawing that I did in my painting, you can do that, and you can really kind of identify which ones and really kind of unify and streamline your process. Now whether you're switching between brands of paint or whatever you happen to be using, there's actually an interesting thing with pigments is that the same pigment might produce 2 different colors depending on how much of the pigment they use. One thing I found rather interesting recently is a friend of mine gifted me a couple of the M-Gram Artist Acrylic paints. There's Quinacridone Violet and Quinacridone Rose. Now these colors, I'll hold them up I guess this way, they're interesting. They're different colors. One's definitely more of a bluish violet, the other one's definitely more reddish. What's interesting about these 2 colors is they're made with the exact same pigment. They're made with Quinacridone Violet PV19. But this one again, PV19, PV19. These are 2 different colors. So when you identify the pigment, you can, one, see that difference between the 2 colors, as well as see how different things are between the same brand, between multiple brands. Here's another interesting one. Golden has this color called Micaceous Iron Oxide. They call it black gesso with a bite. It's sort of a little bit of has a gritty texture and it's black. This uses PR101. PR is a red pigment. This is a black paint. You might notice that red oxide is also PR101. This is what people are thinking of when they think of PR101, because the PR101 is, what is it called? Synthetic red oxide or red iron oxide. Now this same color in core watercolors is called Venetian red. So all three of these, and this is going to be, they're both red. This is that same red. Here's a Liquitex ink, red oxide, same pigment. And a lot of times, something like this, it's going to look the same color, but every now and then you get the oddball. This one, that's made with the same red pigment, and it's black. So you really got to pay attention to exactly what colors are what the names of colors are, what's in the paints, and really being able to reference back to that database to say, is this the same color? Yes, it's the same color in my acrylics, in the inks, in the watercolors, in a pastel. Something like this Rembrandt one, which the references for it, I think, are on the box somewhere. All of these colors are the same color. And if you know what the pigment is, then you know exactly what you're looking for. So sort of this, I guess you'd say, cross-platform art media experience with learning pigments and learning the different names of colors and how names of colors aren't necessarily the names of the pigments and how that varies, especially between brands. That's the short term. Let's talk long term. How useful is this information down the road? Whether you're using wet media or dry media, learning about the stuff that you make really allows you to make smarter decisions, both on canvas as well as just in the planning stages when you're sketching. Knowing the difference between certain pigments, such as more opaque ones and more transparent ones, will allow you to save both time and money on the next project you make, as well as dozens and dozens of projects down the road. Plus, it's always fun to be intelligent and nerdy with your friends when you're saying, oh, PW6? That's titanium white. Oh, PBK7? That's carbon black. Because, why wouldn't you? So while the pigment database may not be the best tool for every painter, for the more experienced artist, it's a great way to build the knowledge about the supplies that you use. So if you learned anything in this video, you do want to check out the pigment database, hit that like button, consider supporting on Patreon, and get subscribed if you're not already. And this has been from Cinderblock Studios. See you guys next time. Oh, PW6, that's the titanium white. PBK black, that's carbon black. Yeah. Did I say PBK black? I think I said PBK black. That's what happens when I get excited.